Hello, my name is Cameron Burrell, and I would like to welcome everyone to today's WED Talk, 3 C's for Managing Unconscious Bias. Before we kick off our WED Talk today, I would like to introduce the Director of Workforce and Economic Development for the County of Bucks, Billy Barnes. Thanks for joining us today, Billy.
Thank you for the introduction, Cameron. Good morning, everyone. I'm Billy Barnes, Executive Director of Workforce and Economic Development. On behalf of the Bucks County Workforce Development Board and the county, I want to welcome everyone to WED Talks. Today's discussion focuses on the 3 C's for managing unconscious bias. Creating a safe and inclusive work culture is no longer a choice. It's an essential competitive advantage. This commitment is integral to increasing employee engagement, retention, and innovation, which results in improved performance, productivity, and a positive impact on the bottom line. Businesses must define a clear DEI strategy supported by frequent diversity and inclusion training and supplemented by initiatives like employee resource groups to harness the advantages of diversity. By joining our WED Talks today, you are ready to increase a sense of belonging for your staff, clients, and partners. Let's introduce our expert who will lead today's discussion. Back to you, Cameron.
Thanks, Billy. I'm pleased to introduce our WED Talk presenter, Dima Ghawi. Dima is Middle Eastern in her genes, American in her heart, and a global citizen in her soul. She comes to us with decades of experience leading diverse teams, creating inclusive corporate cultures, and elevating employee engagement. Having led teams in 19 countries for IBM, Merrill Lynch, and Intuit, she developed a unique expertise in meeting the demands of an exploding global workforce. Her life's mission is to amplify the voices of those excluded within corporate cultures and their communities. The lessons Dima learned through her personal and professional trials fuel her with the motivation to stand before you today, inspire you, propel your growth, and expand your thinking. Please help me welcome the international keynote speaker, award-winning author, and maker of the best hummus you'll ever taste, Dima Ghawi.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Cameron, for the introduction and starting our conversation. Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to be with you today. As you heard as part of the introduction, it's not an option right now. We need to create inclusive work cultures. We need to have our employees come to work and feel a sense of belonging and safety. And one of the things that stop it, even if we have great intention, what stops it all the time are the biases that we are not even aware of, and they affect who we hire, who we promote, who we want to work with, who we want to mentor. So that's why what we're going to spend time on today. This session is very engaging. So the more you are sharing in the chat, your thoughts, and I'm going to be asking you things throughout the presentation, and also feel free to enter questions. The more engaging, the more we hear from you, the better it's going to be as a fun presentation. So I hope you're ready to learn something new, to create more inclusion within your team and your community, and I hope you're ready to have some fun as well. So let's go ahead and start. I just need somebody to confirm that you can see my screen, and we'll go ahead and start.
Yes, we can see your screen, Dima.
Thank you. Okay. Now, as we're starting, I'm going to share with you information about person 1 and person 2, and I want you to tell me in the chat what is the first thing that came to your mind when you're gonna see the information about person 1 and 2. What do you think is their person 1's gender, race, ethnicity, political views, religious beliefs, just from the information I'm going to share with you? So person 1 earns hourly minimum wage, has credit card debt, rents an apartment in a low-income neighborhood, likes to watch James Bond, and voted for George W. Bush. So go ahead in the chat, tell us what comes to your mind related to this person. First, images or stories about this person that comes to your mind. Okay. Diana, Republican. I see, okay, under the questions, I see people entering some comments like male, middle-aged male, okay. So let's go to person 2 as the rest of you are typing. Okay, I see here young male, fast food, fast food worker, okay. Now, person 2. Paid 60,000 in student loans, trades Bitcoin, stayed at a Buddhist monastery in Taiwan, was lost in Serbia, and worked on a project with the United Nations. So what comes to your mind related to person 2? What is the image that comes to your mind? How does this person, what do you think is this person, how do they look like? What do you think are their views? Okay, I see. I don't know, Tracy, if the white male, this is related to person 1 or 2. So educated, worldly, wealthy. So the reason I'm sharing this, we call this the first impression. Whenever we hear information about a person or we meet a person for the first time, we have the first impression where our mind automatically starts building images and stories and even judgment about other people without even knowing anything about them. What we're going to do, I'm going to take you through the slides, and towards the end of our time together, we're going to go back to this page. And I want to ask you then, is your view the same or did it change? Because you're going to learn a lot about biases and how we are going to manage them. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start. We have, all of us, we have an unconscious bias. It's also called implicit bias, or they have other names for it as well. But before we talk about that, it's important to share that there are two kinds of biases out there. The first one is the one that people are aware of. They know that they have a bias towards other groups of people. They should not be proud of themselves, but it is aware. Their brain is aware of it. So as an example, one of my clients is they're called the Cardiovascular Institute of the South. They work with patients that have heart issues. And they told me that many times when they have new patients walking in, they would feel uncomfortable at working, for example, with being treated by a black nurse, which is so sad. And they would say, can you get me a white nurse? Or they would, if a nurse is helping them, they would say, can you get me a thinner nurse? It's so sad. It still happens every single day. The reason I share this is they're aware of it. What we're going to talk about today is all of these other biases, the implicit biases that we all have, and they affect our decisions, but we're not aware of. So these biases they're also judgments. Just like whenever you saw the information about person 1 and 2, you automatically have assumptions in your head about person 1 and 2. And they are based on our experiences, what our caregivers taught us about different groups of people growing up. They're based on the media and how the media constantly keeps feeding our mind and about other people and constantly keeps dividing us. And the problem with these biases, they go undetected. Many people don't even know that they have them. They think they are the most inclusive people in the world, but they're still having these biases, and they affect every decision they make. They affect who they want to surround themselves with, who they want to be friends, and as if our brain has shortcuts. So our brain, it receives so much information every second. It's impossible for our brain to be able to process it and be aware of everything we are thinking. So as a result, it groups information. So it starts judging as if all millennials are a certain way, All women are a certain way. All baby boomers are a certain way. Everybody who is something is a certain way. So in a way, our brain is grouping all of this information so it would be able to process all of this very quickly in order for us to continue to survive and to multitask and continue to do our work. So now, in a simple way, think of our brain as if we have two kinds of brain. We have the fast brain and we have the slow brain. And without going into scientific terms and confusing you, our fast brain is, according to scientists, it processes about 11 million bits of information a second. So much information. It is the goal of the fast brain is to keep us safe. And this is the brain where it is it's very primitive. It is the old part of our brain, and it is all about fight, flight, or freeze. So all of this is happening. The goal is to keep us safe. And I'll give you an example. How many of you were leaving work, you were going home, you had so much on your mind, and you started the car, but then suddenly you arrived at your destination and you don't even remember taking a right or stopping at a stop sign or anything? How many of you, go in the chat and enter, how many of you can relate to this, where you started the car and then you arrived, but you don't remember what happened in between? Just say yes. Okay, now the slow brain, this is the one that is so much more intentional, present. It is aware. It thinks. It questions us. Why do I like to surround myself with people that are similar to me? Why do I choose to hire this person and not this other person? It is slower. According to scientists, it processes just 40 bits of information a second. So see the difference between 11 million with our fast brain and then just the 40 bits for the slow brain. Very, very different. Now, have you realized that people tend to like to surround themselves with others that are similar to them? And I want you to start thinking about, how do these biases apply in our daily work and affect the team engagement and affect how we are interacting with others? And also, what can we do about it? And that is what we're going to spend a lot of time on today. So now, I want you to enter in the chat which one you think is the lie, and I'll read them for you. Biases impact our behavior and choices. We don't have unconscious biases because we're bad people. We have them because we're people, and we can eliminate all of these biases. Which one you think is the lie? Number two, number three, number two. Good. So the lie is number three. We definitely cannot eliminate all of them. We can manage them. We can learn about them like we are here today, but we cannot eliminate them. We need to be more intentional in understanding these biases. And that's why I'm so thankful that you are attending today to get to learn about all of this. Now, when we talk about biases, it's so important to learn that we have these implicit biases not because we're bad people. We have them because we are people. And I'll share with you an example that happened to me. I graduated from the University of San Diego, and that was 2004. A few years ago, they reached out to me and they asked me to give a commencement address. I was so excited to go back to my people and to motivate them on that important day of their graduation and inspire them as they're starting their career journey. And I was given clear instructions that I'm supposed to fly to San Diego. I live in Louisiana now. So fly to San Diego, be there an hour early, and I'm supposed to meet with the dean, and the dean was going to introduce me to Provost Baker. So Provost is somebody so senior in leadership at the university. It was wonderful. I took a flight to San Diego. I was there even earlier than an hour. I was in this space that could hold over 6,000 people, all empty spaces. So if any of you're afraid of public speaking, you can only imagine how horrified I was feeling. And the dean came, he introduced himself, and he said, come on, let me introduce you to Provost Baker. In this entire space, there were only 4 people, the dean, myself, and also there were 2 on the stage, both of them wearing PhD cap and gown. One is a Black woman, the other is a white man. I walked up the stage with so much pride and excitement. I went to the white man and I said, hello, Provost Baker, I am Dima. And everybody paused and they said, oh, he's not Provost Baker, she is Provost Baker. So the reason I share this with you to tell you that I am so focused on the advancement of women in leadership. I resigned from my corporate job 7 years ago to start a business focused on the advancement of women, but also I am the one, when I read the word provost, just read the word in the email, the first image that came to my mind was not a Black woman. Of course, I feel so horrible about that, and I felt so bad because of the look she gave me, as if she was telling me, "Here we go again, somebody else," not recognizing her for her ability just because of her skin color and her gender. So that is so important to realize and to start observing ourselves. And many people, they may feel uncomfortable with all of this and they start, oh, I'm seeing a message that the audio is not working. Is the audio, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dima.
Thank
Some
you.
people, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm sharing this because to help everybody realize that we all have these biases, and not because we're bad, we have them because we're human. And that's why it's important to learn about them and to learn from our mistakes and to help other people and to be an ally. Here's a funny example for you. I am an aunt for an adorable twins. Now they turned 4, but when they were 1 year old, I bought them this pony from Amazon and they loved it. My brother sent me pictures of them playing with the pony and hugging the pony. Around the same time, a friend of mine, he did a favor for me. And usually I may get him a gift card for Starbucks or a restaurant, but I knew at that time that his son was turning 1 year old and I have the best toy for any kid that's around 1. So I went to Amazon, I found the pony that I mailed for my nephew and niece, and I clicked on buy again and sent it to my friend for his son. 2 days later, I got a message that has this.
You got it, buddy? Yes. Can you say gracias, Miss Dima? Say gracias.
So I sent the little boy a pink and purple pony. And I freaked out. I called my friend and I said, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Put the pony back in the box and I will return it back to Amazon. We'll exchange it. But my friend is very wise. He said, no, you don't need to do anything. He told me his son loves colorful toys and his son loves his pony. And that was the moment that I realized I'm the one who always says, pink is not just for girls, blue is not just for boys. But when I was in that moment, all the old programming came back. And as a result, it affected how I reacted to this situation. So that's the thing. It is the programming we have, and it continues to affect our decisions. Here's a final example, and then we'll get to talk about the different kinds of biases. My computer got hacked a couple of years ago, and the hacker, he is so tricky. He got into my apps and the different websites. Thank goodness he couldn't get to my bank account, but he was able to get into the tool that I use to invoice my clients, and they pay me using that tool. And he started paying my clients back their money. He was refunding them back the money. And my clients, some of them did not even tell me they got the money back. So I want you in the chat to tell me, what bias do you think was in this story? So I shared this story. What bias do you think was going on in my mind? Yes, Thank you. Yes, my brain automatically assumed that the hacker is a male, and even though I talk about this all the time, my brain refuses to imagine other than a male sitting in a dark room hacking my computer. So it's interesting how it happens, and maybe it's because I'm surrounded with men that are in IT. I don't see as many women in IT. So as a result, my brain constantly gets programmed with that. So now here's another two truths and a lie, and tell me which one you think is the lie. Unconscious biases are activated outside of our control and without our consent. They are aligned with our beliefs. Detecting bias is tricky because we confuse our initial reaction with insight. Which one you think is the lie? Okay, so yes, number two is the lie. I see two and one. Number two is the lie. They are definitely not aligned with our beliefs. We may believe that we are the most inclusive, kind people, but still these biases affect our decisions. Just like in my situation with Provost Baker, that's not what I did, was not aligned with my beliefs. The same thing with my friend's son, that was not aligned with my beliefs, but I still did it. So now, imagine a person in a leadership role. Enter in the chat. What is the first thing that comes to your mind related to the physical characteristics of this person? So we see a person in a leadership role, or we think about that individual. What physical characteristics come to your mind? Do you think that sometimes our bias is based on our fear of how other will react? You were afraid your friend would be upset with the color of the pony. I think many of us have this reaction as we are afraid of how others will react, and so we allow the biases. That's such a good point, Kathleen. And I think part of it too. Yes, because as if I'm assuming in my head the bias that my friend has related to how the color of the toy should be. So it's all mixed together. That's why we need to watch these reactions and learn about this topic. So thank you for your comment. So I'm seeing tall, thin, clean cut, wearing red, strong. So all of this. So imagine how when we hear, just think about a person in a leadership role, how all of these images come to our mind. Think about what gender does this person tend to be? What race does this person tend to be? Do you imagine somebody on a wheelchair? So there was a research that was done with Fortune 500 CEOs, and they found that on average, they are 6 feet tall, which is about 2.5 inches taller than the average American man. So do you think it was part of the job description that they were looking for somebody who is experienced and who is 6 feet and taller? Or number two, do you think it's just a coincidence? Or do you think that maybe there's a bias related to how we view a person who is taller or somebody based on their height, where we would automatically assume a person's qualifications based on their height without even realizing that we're doing these things? What do you think? Do you think it is just a coincidence? Do you think it is maybe part of the job description, or do you think maybe there is a bias there? Yeah, so absolutely, there's a bias. So whether it is the height, whether it is the weight, there was also a research that was done on women. And most of us, I hope we would all think this way. There should be no correlation between a woman's weight and her ability to be an effective leader. So obviously, and this is when we're activating our slow brain, but the fast brain says something else. And here's an example. There was a research that was done on 500 with 500 hiring managers, and they showed them women with different body weight. Less than 6% of them selected the heaviest, like women with the heaviest body weight, and they said that they have leadership potential. Obviously, all of these women are not going to be identical, but they have similar background. And it's interesting how the women with the heaviest body weight were not seen that they are as qualified or they have as good leadership potential compared to others. So this happens all the time based on the skin color, based on here the example of the height, the weight, and this is called beauty bias. And that's the first lesson you're going to learn, beauty bias. Beauty bias is when we tend, without even knowing it, to like to surround ourselves with people that we perceive as beautiful. And sometimes people would say, but like especially related to the height, well, tall people tend to be more confident. I hear this all the time, and it makes me wonder, like, were they born confident, or is it because of society programmed us about that this is a quality that's being perceived as beautiful, and then this person tends to get all the compliments. Wow, look at you, you're tall, look at you, how handsome you are, and as a result is building the confidence. So that is the first one, the beauty bias. There are over 180 biases. We're going to learn about some today. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to be able to eliminate them. There's so many of them, and they keep being enforced and taught over and over to us by the media, but what we hear related to our surrounding, our community. But the more we learn about them, the more we're able to manage them. How many of you are ready to learn about some of your implicit biases? Go ahead, enter in the chat. Here is another bias. It is called affinity bias. Affinity bias is we tend to like to surround ourselves with people that are similar to us. We like to be their friends. We like to hire them, to promote them, to mentor them without even realizing it. There's a sense of safety when we are around others that are similar, as if it is an invisible bond that we have. Even when I told you about the story of Provost Baker and the graduation event at USD, I said I was excited to go back to my people and to motivate them on this important day. I don't know these people. I left in 2004 after I graduated, but they are my people. How many of you heard somebody senior talk about someone very young and say, wow, he reminds me of myself when I was his age? So there's this affinity, there's this bond. Most likely this young candidate is going to get a little better chance of being hired, being promoted, being mentored, and as a result, they're getting a little more advantage, or maybe so much more advantage compared to others. Now, I want you to draw a table on, hopefully you have a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and I want you to write down names of 5 to 7 people you trust. So it doesn't mean that you trust them with your life. It is people you tend to like to be around, people you trust to have conversation with. Maybe you enjoy having lunch or coffee or dinner with. So put down names of 5 to 7 people that you like to surround yourself with, that, here's the trick, that are not family members. 5 to 7, not family members. You can also not put, you can't put the names of your pets. I've had situation, I'm looking for humans, and I've had situation where people put Jesus on the list. So let's not put Jesus here. Let's look at your circle of individuals that I'm not saying you don't trust Jesus, but I'm looking for humans that you're interacting with. And I'll give you a few seconds. Now, Next column, I want you to put a check mark next to anyone who has similar age group as yours. So maybe within like 10 years. So check mark next to anyone who has similar age group as yours. Next column, put a check mark next to anyone who has similar race as your race. Next, check mark next to anyone who has similar educational level as yours. And with all, assuming you know, like some of them you may not know, and that's okay. Next one, put a check mark next to anyone who has similar political views as yours. Next is your religious beliefs. Check mark next to anyone who has similar religious beliefs as yours. Next is sexual orientation. And then finally, the socioeconomic status. So when you look at your table with your check marks, what did you observe? Similar to myself, thank you, Michael. Similar to me. Tracy, varied, thank you. Much more similar than different. So congratulations, you have affinity bias. And I have it as well. When I did this exercise the first time, I had tons of check marks, like so many check marks. And it is part of us being human. It is easy for us to surround ourselves with people that are similar to us. But the problem is when we start thinking about who are we unintentionally excluding, who can add value to our life, and we can add value to their lives, but they're not on our list here because of these biases. Here, this example is about our personal life and people that we enjoy to surround ourselves with and we trust. But imagine how the same thing applies at work, how all of these biases, in this situation, the affinity bias, is affecting inclusion within the team, where many times we may exclude others and we're not even aware of it. And as a result, we end up with something like this circle of sameness, where we have similar people working together. We hire similar people as who we are, and we call it a culture fit. How many of you've heard whenever a hiring manager is looking for candidates, they would say, wow, he is a culture fit, or he is not a culture fit. What does it mean? A culture fit means we're bringing the same kind of people to our team. What we really need is not a culture fit. We need a culture add. We need people to come and add value, challenge the norm, help us to think differently. But if we have this affinity bias and we're not aware of it during the interview, imagine how we keep hiring the same kind of people. How many of you can relate to this, where this person, the circle of trust, is the dog and everybody else is far, far away? Now, let's learn about the next one. The next one is called conformity bias or bandwagon effect. And what this is, that for us to do something just because other people are doing it, it's easy for our brain to assume that other people know better, that they are right and we're wrong, or maybe they know more. And it's interesting how much marketers and salespeople use this a lot. The problem with it is it becomes a groupthink. If we automatically assume that other people know better and they're right and we're wrong, we are not bringing our ideas and our full self to meetings and in our conversations. So here in this situation, they have the person with the hat, I'm guessing that's the boss, saying yes, and now other people automatically start saying yes to an answer, and even the ones that believe the answer should be no, look at it, they're saying yes. How many of you've been in meetings where it was similar, where people automatically repeat or say what they assume the boss wants to hear, or they would assume that they're wrong and not either not share anything, or share what is different than what they truly believe in. The problem with that is, how can we really have the diversity of thought if we're experiencing that? If we just keep repeating the same thing over and over, and we are not bringing the new ideas and the creativity into the conversation. I've been in so many meetings similar to this, where it is just a lot of groupthink and people just continue to follow what other people say. And it is the assumption where everyone is doing a certain thing that we need to do it as well. I mentioned to you that marketers and salespeople use this a lot. And I'll share an example. One time I was buying a flight on American Airline, and as I was completing the booking, they were trying to sell me to get insurance on my flight. And I don't like to get that insurance. But instead of them saying, you should get the insurance, they did something different. They said, 22,000 people today bought the insurance on their flight. That's it. So what were they really doing? They were telling me as if 22,000 people know something that maybe I don't know. Maybe it is the fear of missing out, where maybe if I don't get it, I'm wrong and they're right. And as a result, a lot of people end up getting the insurance. Now, next one. Next one is guilty by association, where it is unfairly judging an individual by the group that they belong to. And I'll demonstrate for you what that means. Go ahead in the chat and type, if I say a millennial, the generation millennial, what do people tend to say about this generation, about the millennials? So enter in the chat, what do people say about the millennials? Soft, lazy, entitled, spoiled, casual, tech savvy. Okay, so now I want you, if you are a millennial, I want you to just say that in the chat. And don't worry, I love the millennials. So go ahead in the chat if you're a millennial and say, I am a millennial. I want to see who here is a millennial. I won't stay in a job for more than 1 year. Won't stay in a job more than 1 year. Yeah. So do we have any? Okay, good. So let me pick one of you. Sarah, I'll pick you. Sarah, are you lazy, entitled, spoiled? Enter in the chat if you think you are lazy, entitled, and spoiled. And of course, if you like avocado toast and lattes, because that is another thing that that people assume about millennials, that they all like avocado toast. Good. Absolutely. So you're not. And the problem is, many people would assume that just the fact that you are a millennial and the generation is like that, like with the assumption about the generation, they may automatically assume without realizing it that you're a millennial, you may be lazy, entitled, and all of these other things. The reason I share this, and I think it is so funny how we judge each other, sad but funny, that not everybody that belongs to a specific generation or race or gender are the same as the entire group. But our brain, because brain is trying to process a lot of information, it's easy for it to assume that we have the same qualities of the group that we are part of. Now, how many, I want you to go in the chat and tell me which generation you think they're talking about. What is happening to our young people? They disrespect their elders, they disobey their parents, they ignore the law, they riot in the streets inflamed with wild notions. Their morals are decaying. What is to become of them? Which generation you think they're talking about? You love the avocado toast? How funny. So which generation? Boomer, okay. Boomer, Gen X, Millennial and Z. Here we go. It was Socrates, 3rd century before Christ. And the reason I share this, first to shock you, because it is very shocking, but to also help you realize how we always look at the generation after us and we assume things about them. We're always saying that they're lazy and they're not respectful and all of these. But it is so much associated with the guilty by association, because we look at the entire generation and we assume things about them. Here's a funny one. One of my friends, she's Italian, like her parents were originally from Italy. And when people here in the US, they hear that she's originally Italian, they ask her, is your family mafia? Which is funny because they're sad but funny, where just the fact that her parents are originally from Italy, people would automatically assume that they're mafia. And it is associating people with a bigger group, whether it makes sense or not. And I was talking to a friend who is also Italian. He told me that just by looking at a person's nose that is from Italy, he would know what family they're from, and he would know if that's a good family or a bad family, as if they're little kids and they have a cheat sheet with different nose, and depending on the nose, you would know if that's a family you want to be friends with or not. It's so interesting, but we tend to do that. And at work, there was a research that was done where they brought a low performer, somebody not doing good in their job, and they had the low performers sit in a specific location, and they brought somebody else who's an average performer. That second person is doing okay, doing well. They put the second person next to the low performer, and they started doing surveys and asking other people after a few months about the second person, and many people started associating him as a low performer just because this individual was sitting next to the low performer. It is interesting how our brain, we all do these things. We're not aware of them, but imagine how it is affecting the work culture, a work environment, and we're not even aware of it. Which of the two you think has better chance of being invited to a first interview, Muhammad or Michael? Okay, Michael, what if the job is in IT or engineering? And what if the job is in Dubai in the Middle East? It's a global issue. Bias, as many people may think it is just in the US, it's not. It's a human issue. It's a global issue. And I know many people that they changed their name from Muhammad to Michael, or LaDonna to Don, or Jose to Joe. And this is called whitewashing, where they're changing part of their resume or the way they talk or the way they act just to act white, so this way they would not have the biases that other people may have about them, whether they're aware of it or they're not aware of it. I was talking to someone recently, and she said after she graduated from college, her name is very unique, and she's from like a totally different country. So she said that for 6 months after she graduated, when she used her real name, she was not getting not even one interview, like invitation for an interview. When she changed her name and she called herself Mary and she changed it on her resume, she, like within a week, she got an email to invite her to an interview. So it's interesting how these things happen. So think about these biases. We talked about beauty bias, affinity bias, conformity, guilty by association, and name bias. I want you to start thinking about how do these affect the work culture? How do they affect who gets hired, who gets promoted, who gets opportunities? How do they affect the team engagement and the sense of belonging and safety? So spend some time, think about that. And if you're comfortable, enter in the chat. What are your thoughts related to some of the biases? Imagine we have over 180. Here, we just talked about 5. But do you see how they unintentionally, we end up excluding people, and how they can create a culture where it's not healthy and not safe, and we're not even aware of it because of these biases? So now, the bigger question is, what can we do about it? How can we manage these biases? As we learned, we cannot eliminate them. So we're not gonna be healed from these biases. We're always going to experience them. But the main thing is, how can we manage them so that we would not allow them affect our interaction with our team members, with our clients, with our family members, with our community? So what do you think? What can we do in order to manage these biases? As you're typing, I'll start taking you through some of the answers, but I would love to hear from you. Oh, I see some came through. Being aware has to help, but we are still human. Yes, we're still human, Allison. We're still gonna make mistakes, but the more we're aware, the more we observe our behavior, the better. Oops. To be aware of them. Great point. Thank you. It is through curiosity, courage, and commitment. And these are the 3 C's. So if you remember in the title, it is the 3 C's for managing our unconscious biases. So it's through curiosity, courage, and commitment. And I'm going to take you through them. So curiosity, which you have here, you mentioned to be more self-aware, to start observing our behavior and to start observing our assumptions about other people. Just like with the provost baker, I started observing it, and I became so much more intentional in not repeating the same mistake in other situations. But again, I'm a human, and it's a matter of not like over judging myself. It is a matter of observing and being intentional in being inclusive. The other thing is to activate our slow brain. We learned about the slow brain, and it is like to slow down whenever we are meeting somebody for the first time, to slow our mind, as if we need a second first impression. We know about the first impression, that this is filled with assumptions about other people, so we're not going to change the first impression, but as if we need to slow our mind after the first impression and have a second first impression. And then to recognize that our perception may not be other people's reality. And what I mean by that is, many times it's easy to assume that other people, they have similar experiences as our experiences, or the way they view the world is the same, but it's not. And I'll share with you an example. One time I was giving this workshop to a big group, and there was only one Black woman in the entire group. We were talking about these biases, and I asked them, I said, what experiences do you have with biases, whether you did them or they happened to you? And she shared that in her area, there's only one grocery store. And every time she goes to that grocery store, she feels that the people that work there, they're watching her or they're following after her. It's so sad that they're assuming that she's shoplifting just because of her skin color, which is so sad. And it was last year when this workshop happened. Another attendee, he got frustrated by her comment, and he said, we're in 2021, this does not happen anymore. Imagine how sad it is, and how sad she felt, that maybe it doesn't happen in his world. Maybe his perception is, of course, is his reality, and this doesn't happen in his life. But we need to be aware that all of us, we have different experiences. All of us, our reality may be different because of who we are, because of our background, because of our sexual orientation, because of our ability or disability. And that's where learning about other people, learning about their stories, their journey is so powerful, because this way it would open our mind related to their experiences and their struggles, and we get to learn from that. And then trainings, just like what we're doing right now. So hopefully you would go and you encourage your team to get to learn more about this topic. There's so many articles on blogs and TED Talks about it, and it's wonderful. So there's a lot of resources for us to continue to learn. The other thing is courage. So we learned about the first one, curiosity, learning about ourselves, learning about other people, learning about their stories. But this takes courage, and we're changing behavior, we're changing thinking. That takes a lot of courage, and courage to advocate for others and to be ally. And um, it does take a lot of courage to support others whenever we see something inappropriate, to say something about it. Just like at the airports, they say all the time, if you see something, say something. And they're referring to, things scary and terrorism. The same thing in this situation. If we see somebody dealing with biases, or we see somebody saying something that is not appropriate, to not just be quiet and to say something. And to practice micro affirmations, instead of reading that description, I'll explain to you what it means. Many situations, and tell me if you experience that. Let's say a woman is in a meeting and she shares an idea, a new thought. Many situations that happen where the team may not even hear her, but then a few minutes later, a man says the same exact idea, and somehow he's heard, and people would say, "Wow, that's such a great idea." Enter in the chat if you experience that. So, and I've seen it where, again, the woman is not being heard, the man is being heard, where there's a bias towards that. Instead of just saying, "We're busy, we're just going to move on," and like it happened in the past, is to go back to the woman, and let's assume her name is Dawn. Say, "Dawn, I heard you say something similar. How about we go back to you? How about you share with us more?" So in a way, we're giving her the space to share her thoughts. And in this situation, it's related to a woman, but it happens in so many different situations. Because of these implicit biases, some individuals may not be heard. And it's, again, to give them the space to share their thoughts. And then finally, commitment. Commitment for the rest of our lives. It's not just learning about this today and moving on. It does take a lot of commitment. It takes commitment to be inclusive, to bring people that are different to us into our life, into our team, into our community, and to, of course, to be inclusive to them. But also know that this is going to require work from all of us until the last breath, to the last breath of all of our lives, to create change. The positive thing is there's a lot of good momentum going on. Many people now want to hear about these biases, learn about them, be intentional in being allies, to be change makers. It is so positive, and that's why it requires all of us to be part of this momentum, be part of the journey, and create inclusion at work and outside of work. So if you leave with 3 words, they are the 3 C's. It's curiosity, courage, and commitment in every single interaction. Now, I mentioned to you at the beginning of the presentation that I'm going to show you this slide towards the end, and I want to hear from you. Is the stories you had in your mind, the first impression you had about person 1 and person 2, are they still the same, or did they change? So go ahead in the chat. I can't wait to hear from you. What is your thought now about person 1 and 2? Is it the same, or did it change compared to an hour ago when we first started? So Jennifer, you can type in the chat. That's okay. You can type your thought here if you want. Is your impression the same or did it change? Okay, I'm glad, Diana, more open-minded. Thank you. Great, provided a very different perspective. I'm glad to hear that. I just hope that some of you are starting to realize that this is not enough information. How can we build an assumption or a story in our mind about person one and person two? This is not enough information. So imagine how many people we meet every single day and we work with, and we have the assumptions about them, just like the assumptions here, and we don't know really who they are. In the diversity training, they always compare all of us to like an iceberg. So we have the iceberg, we have the part on top of the surface, and then we have the part under the surface of the water. The top of the surface is what we see about the person. It is our skin color, it is our gender, it is how we look, our height, our accent. And many times it's easy for us to build assumption about a person just from what's on top of the surface. But who we really are is what's under the surface. It is our values, it is our story, it is our struggle. And that's when we get to really know the person and to break all of these biases that affect us and affect our interaction. That's when we need to learn about the person's story, learn about their journey, and of course, it just get to be intentional in our interaction with them. So I am person one and I am person two. And I intentionally included this information here. I'll share with you a little about myself, but I included this not to tell you about my story and my background, but to help you realize what I was saying earlier, that it's easy for us to build assumption and judgment about others. In my situation, when I moved to the US, I moved after I was 20. I was married through traditional arranged marriage in Jordan, and that marriage ended up being very abusive. So I came to the U.S. I just needed a job, so I was working minimum wage, 10 hours a week. I was depending a lot on my credit card. That's because I ended up escaping from that marriage. I was barely able to pay rent in an area that was so unsafe and low income. I used to love James Bond, and I included this here because I wanted to trick you. It's easy for people to automatically assume that, oh, person one has to be a male because person one likes James Bond, or person one has to be a Republican or conservative because that person voted for George W. Bush. I'm an independent. I believe we need to challenge all parties, but I intentionally selected certain things in person one and person two to activate all of these biases that we have. Now, I focused on my education, graduated from college from the University of San Diego. I graduated with 60,000. I like to trade, and of course, thank goodness I got to work after I graduated and paid it off. I love to trade Bitcoin, but just few. I have like a couple of $100s that I trade. I intentionally included this here because a lot of people assume that men only trade Bitcoins, or this person must be very wealthy or privileged, which I am not. So, but again, I'm activating these biases, the quick assumptions that we have about others. I'm so curious about all religions, so that's why I got to explore the Buddhist religion. I used to work with IBM, and I used to manage a global team. One time, I was supposed to fly to Bulgaria, and I got lost in Serbia. So anyone who wants the full story, I wrote it up, and I'm happy to share it with you. It's a lot of fun. Thank goodness I'm still alive. And then I used to work with IBM on a project with the United Nations. The reason I share all of this information is to help you realize that we all have biases. It's easy for us to have assumptions about others just from little information that we have about them. So I'm hoping that with our interaction today and what you learned is to slow your mind whenever you're meeting somebody for the first time, to especially when you're making decisions about hiring and promotion and who you surround yourself with, and to be intentional to get to know the other people at an individual level, to watch when you are grouping them with like a bigger group and assuming things about them accordingly. I love this topic because it has a powerful ripple effect. When we learn, when we become inclusive, when we are intentional in learning about our biases, it's not just helping us at work, it's helping us with our family members, with our place of worship, creating better communities. And that is just so healthy and positive. Here's my contact information. It was such a pleasure spending time with you. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. And again, it was pleasure being with you. Thank you for everybody who provided comments and engaged with me throughout the presentation. Thank you.
Cameron?
Yep. Please join us for the next WED Talk on Wednesday, December 14th. Best-selling author and leadership coach Ty Bennett will discuss how partnership is the new leadership. During this discussion, Ty will share strategies for creating transformation in your business, getting your team's full commitment, and becoming an influential leader who creates deep connections with your people. Look for a registration link coming soon on the calendar of events page at www.buckscounty.gov/PA career link. Thanks everyone and have a great day.